Okay, so this is a video of my band Sungazer performing at Rockwood Music Hall in the Lower East Side of Manhattan at our EP release show back in January. Right now, you're hearing more than the sum of the four musicians on that stage. It's because on that fateful winter night, we committed the cardinal sin of live musical performance, the ultimate transgression for which we will never be absolved. We performed with backing tracks.
How dare you!
There certainly is the feeling out there that playing pre-recorded music in a live band situation is somehow morally wrong, and in some small way, it's killing live musical experiences. But is it, though?
Yeah. It is. Great musicians of the past didn't rely on backing tracks to put on great and engaging shows, and if you need them to put on an exciting show, then you're devaluing the craft of musical performance, and you're cheating.
Cheating? Isn't like a game or a sport? Some kind of illegal or unfair advantage over the competition?
I mean, what? You're not good enough to play your own music? Yeah, you're a cheater.
Wait, so is music some kind of zero-sum activity with a clear winner and loser? Some kind of competition to see who can play the most complicated and difficult music without aid?
Well, what about the audience feeling cheated? If I'm paying to go see live music, I want to see music being made for real in front of me. Otherwise, why bother? I just stay at home and turn up my speakers really loud.
It's interesting that you say for real. What do you mean by for real?
Oh, shut up, you smug Vsauce wannabe. You know what I'm talking about. I want to feel that physical and visceral feeling that backing tracks really just can't deliver, especially in small clubs like the one that you were playing in. I want to feel the energy and the sweat in the room. I want to have that real human connection between musician and audience. And yeah, maybe it's not cheating to use backing tracks, but it's certainly robbing the audience of that experience. I think about what French sociologist Antoine Hennion called
the sense of being carried away by a whirlwind of music, an intense breakaway when music finally no longer exists as a score or a piece, but rather as an emotion, when it emerges from the moment as a flicker.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Quoting French sociologists and everything. Aren't you just supposed to be like an avatar for obnoxious YouTube commenters that I can talk down to, though?
We can do research too. That's when we're at our most obnoxious.
I mean, I honestly do agree with you to a certain extent in all of this, but it does seem like you're placing a lot of importance on seeing somebody physically play music and not placing that much importance on the sound of the music itself. The sound isn't as important as the real authentic experience of the live performance, whatever that might be. Now, obviously, the most blatant form of deception that we all know in musical performance is lip syncing, hearing pre-recorded singing that's not coming from a lead vocalist, like with Milli Vanilli or Ashlee Simpson on SNL. People will also pantomime performances with live instruments, like the Red Hot Chili Peppers at the Super Bowl, or this guy, for example. As hard as it is to believe, that guy is not providing the real authentic experience. When performing at Obama's inauguration, esteemed classical musicians Yo-Yo Ma and Itzhak Perlman actually pantomimed their performances. And Whitney Houston's triumphant performance of the national anthem at the 1991 Super Bowl was actually lip-synced. We tend to be more forgiving here because even though they're playing to pre-recorded music at the insistence of television producers, it really looks like they're playing with the audio that we're hearing. We believe that we are having that real authentic experience.
Yeah, but we're not.
It doesn't matter, though. Our experience with music depends on whether or not we believe what it is that we are seeing, and we tend to hear with our eyes. This is why Ashlee Simpson is a fail, and Whitney Houston isn't. So you experience the world as a cross-modal synthesis of your senses. Your senses of sight and hearing, among others, come together in your brain to create a model of what the reality around you actually is. Right now, you are watching a live performance of my band. You can see the sounds that you are hearing. Well, most of them, not my voice though. You probably don't find that particularly jarring because the construct of a voiceover is something that you would expect from a video. Your brain accepts that. Now, you can see the physical source of my voice. There's going to be an odd sensory disconnect that occurs once the audio and visual go out of sync. It feels like you're not experiencing reality as it is, and that's going to feel very wrong. And this is a YouTube video. There's a degree of artifice built in. If you're at a live musical performance, that can't happen. If you hear somebody sing, you'd better see them sing.
Yeah, I mean, like that. Like, what's going on here? Where's the singer? Who's singing?
Well, Jay Soto, the artist who sang on the original, was sick and couldn't make the gig. And so we just played back the recording of her singing and nobody complained.
Well, maybe it's not as bad as lip syncing, but I don't know. To me, it doesn't, look right.
Right, which is why this goes way beyond lip syncing. In certain contexts, listening to any pre-recorded music at all won't feel right to us. There's this term called acousmatic music, which is in reference to music that doesn't have a physical source. So if I was to play you this sound, you could identify what its physical source is. It's a flute, right? The sound object and the physical object are closely linked for us, and so this music is non-acousmatic. However, if I was to play you this sound, it would be a lot harder to identify its physical source. Some kind of synth, maybe? The sound object and the physical object are unlinked, and so this music is acousmatic. It's sound that has been liberated from an explanatory way of listening. The term acousmatic was coined by French composer Pierre Schaefer. He pioneered early electroacoustic music, which was called musique concrète, a style made from manipulating tape recordings that often featured concerts with nothing but loudspeakers on stage, in hopes that the audience would listen to sound freed from its physical sources. Schaefer based the term acousmatic on the students of Pythagoras known as the Acousmaticoi, who allegedly would listen to Pythagoras lecture from behind a screen so to better focus on his words and not be distracted by the sight of the speaker. Kind of like this. Is it working? Anyway, because we have this strong link between our senses, we expect to see what we hear. What this means is that certain genres of music that have that strong link between sound object and physical object will be experienced non-acousmatically. Certain genres of music are non-acousmatic. When Ed Sheeran used a loop pedal to create layers for a live performance, he was accused of using backing tracks, because people could hear guitar parts that they couldn't see him play. If we hear a guitar, we want to see a guitar. Guitar is used in the creation of non-acousmatic music, and so we need to see what we're hearing, lest people on Twitter get sassy.
There's a pub singer on telly, strumming his guitar and singing to some backing tracks. No, wait, it's Ed Sheeran.
How dare you! Hey.
Musicians in these non-acousmatic genres can go to great lengths to make sure that we can identify the source on stage, like James Taylor singing Shower the People. Here, he has a reel-to-reel player on stage to make your brain feel comfortable with the sound of pre-recorded backing vocals.
Shower the people you love with love. Show them the way that you feel.
We aren't seeing singers, but we see a recording playback device, so we're cool. We have a complete cross-modal understanding of reality. Without that visual cue, we would have had that sensory break.
You can run, but you
There's a pub singer on telly, strumming his guitar and singing to
But there are genres of music that do not have these constraints. For example, what does an 808 kick drum look like? I mean, I do know that it comes from the TR-808 rhythm composer, but that's not really what's in our collective visual memory when we hear one. Instead, it's just a sound that we accept for its own sake. In this way, modern electronic music and hip-hop really are the great triumph of the goals of Pierre Schaeffer's musique concrète, music freed from the physical act of performing music, sound objects without physical ones. Electronic music really is modern-day acousmatic music.
There's a pub singer on telly.
Okay, so you've talked about the visual of the whole thing and how we might not like it because of the sensory disconnect and all of that. But, at the end of the day, playing to backing tracks, I don't know, to me, just kind of sounds lame.
Well, if it was occurring in the mid-20th century, it would just be part of the electroacoustic avant-garde. Electroacoustic, combining electronic elements with acoustic elements. Can't you just think of it like that?
All right, fine, but just because you've been able to make a historical connection here in this video doesn't mean that I have to like the music. To me, it ends up feeling kind of sterile and lifeless. Like there's no room for any spontaneity. The music can't breathe. I just don't like it.
All right, fair enough. And, from the perspective of a performer who's done this kind of thing in many different contexts, I do agree with you that it can feel sterile at times. I've played plenty of sets on the rails with playback, from New York City rock clubs to big band gigs, believe it or not, to weddings, to even playing live on national television. And there's always the risk of something going wrong with the technology. Gremlins have a nasty habit of appearing when least expected. Let's try that again. Here we go. 2. Let's try it one more time. Speaking from personal experience, it never really feels like cheating. It's just a kind of a huge hassle to get everything together and get everything feeling good and comfortable when, honestly, a lot of the time you just kind of want to let loose and play. It certainly doesn't feel like I'm getting away with doing less work, getting an edge over my competition. It's just a way of extending what's sonically possible in live performance using the technology that we have on hand. Now, I asked Twitter whether any of this stuff was cheating, and the results that came in were a uniform maybe, depends on the circumstance. Which is interesting because views, I feel like, on this whole subject have softened quite significantly since I started playing to backing tracks in various projects about 10 years ago. People seem to be more willing to experience music live acousmatically. And besides, there are plenty of lies we happily accept in live musical performances anyway. We just never give them much thought because the sound object and the physical object are still linked. For example, nobody can ever actually sing as loud as they do in a rock venue without the aid of a microphone, nor would the kick drum feel so low and bassy. Even in an acoustically dead and dry room, you hear cavernous reverb and effects on a voice, but we accept those sonic deceptions readily, even though that's incongruous with the space around us. We collectively accept those lies quite regularly. We never really complain about how that gets in the way of the real, authentic experience, especially if the experience is better. How's that any different from using backing tracks? When Yo-Yo Ma and company played at Obama's inauguration, the worry was that the extreme January cold would cause serious intonation problems with the wooden acoustic instruments. Unintentional microtonality was simply not an option minutes before the new president was set to be sworn in. A possible solution would have been to use carbon fiber instruments, which wouldn't react so negatively to the cold. This option was ultimately nixed because it was thought that people would be confused by the look of the instruments. They didn't look how they were supposed to. So the sound object and the physical object would be disconnected in a non-acousmatic genre of music. So the truer experience would be to watch somebody perform on the wooden acoustic instruments to a pre-recorded track that they had recorded the day before. This would be the truer, real, authentic experience. Yo-Yo Ma would say that I really wanted to do something that was absolutely physically and emotionally and timing-wise genuine. What we were there for was really to serve the moment.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.